Little over a month ago, we got iPadOS 16 along with new iPad Pros and the 10th gen iPad. And I wanted to cover what I would like to see from the future of the iPad from this point forward. Now, for the record, there's going to be some criticism in this video. There's some criticism in my iPad review videos and iPadOS 16 video, and some people didn't care for that. And the reason why I have criticism is because I genuinely care about these platforms. I love the iPad, and I can see what it can be, and I want to help it get there. So there will be a little bit of criticism, but it's coming from a place of love, not from a place of hate. This video is sponsored by Ugreen. Okay, so let's start with Stage Manager. That was probably the biggest thing to happen to the iPad this year, hardware and software-wise. It gave us windowing and 4 apps on the screen at the same time and a whole bunch of other stuff that I've covered to death. I will put links to videos in the description below if you want to go see that other stuff. But there's a few things that Stage Manager could really benefit from. The first being the ability to open apps in the same stage you're currently in. So if I have Safari open right now and I want to make a note and I tap the Apple Notes icon, it closes Safari, it minimizes Safari, and then opens up Apple Notes. In order to get those into the same spot, I have to drag and drop it into the same spot. That's kind of annoying because you're constantly having to jump between all these different spaces and do these drag and drop. It feels like Minority Report. You're all over the place doing a bunch of hand things. I just want, when I tap an app, it just opens in the same stage. Also, the ability to place windows anywhere and to resize them in any proportion. It's really stuck on this grid system on the iPad, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I'm somebody that works off the iPad full time, and it's just why? Why is it this grid system? Let me put things where I want, and then also when I'm dragging an app around to move it into the position I want, don't also shift all the other apps and windows to another spot. Don't undo all the work that I've been doing and getting stuff exactly where I want it to be. There also really shouldn't be a 4 window per stage limitation. And I say window, not app, because if I have 4 apps open and one of those apps is mail in a same stage and I hit Command N to create a new message, it kicks out the oldest window in that stage. So now I got to move that back in when I'm done composing the message. And we know the iPad can run more than 4 apps or 4 windows at a given time because on the external monitor, it can run 4 on the external monitor and also 4 on the iPad. So just get rid of that. It's not doing anyone any good. Also part of Stage Manager, shortcuts automation. There's very, very little multitasking support in shortcuts for the iPad already, and the stuff that is there is just for split view. There is no Stage Manager automation support whatsoever. Even if it was just recreating stages, hey, let me just open these 4 apps in a stage when I run this shortcut, that would be useful. That to me, that's the bare minimum it could be. The other thing is the strip on the side, not a huge fan of it. Especially since it's on by default, it just takes up a lot of extra space. I turn it off and then I swipe in from the side to get to it. I don't think this needs to be on the display full time. What should happen, in my opinion, is it should be something more like Mac OS Spaces, where you can create a bunch of different spaces, swipe up on the trackpad or on the dock or whatever, and you can see your different spaces and you can jump between them. That way, when you open a new app, it just opens in that space. That part is very opinionated, but I think that would work a little bit better. This video is sponsored by Ugreen. Ugreen sent me a few different items, but the one that jumped out at me in particular that I wanted to share with you all is this 100 watt Nexode desktop charger. It is this 4-port charger that has 3 USB-C ports and a USB-A port. This is a 100-watt charger, so this will charge things like laptops, iPads, iPhones, headphones, anything like that. Anything you need to charge, this can handle it. It's also really small, so it doesn't take up a lot of space on your desk. But I've been using this in a different way. Rather than putting this on my desk, I've actually put this underneath my couch. And why is this thing is the perfect living room charger. So a lot of times I like to work out on my couch, whether I have my iPad or I'm editing a video on my laptop or I'm playing a game on my Switch or something like that. And if I need to charge those devices, a lot of times I just wasn't able to because the outlet was really far from my couch and I just didn't have a cable long enough and I always kept forgetting to get one. But with this guy, because it has the power cable, I'm able to stretch it underneath my couch and then plug multiple USB cables into it so I can charge multiple devices. Ugreen powers up your holiday. I will put links in the description below to where you can go check out this 100-watt Nexode desktop charger. My thanks to Ugreen for sponsoring this video. Moving on from Stage Manager, I think it's time to rethink Notification Center and Control Center on the iPad. It's very much just like, hey, this is what the iPhone has, so we'll put it on the iPad. I honestly think like Control Center and Notification Center could be combined. There's a lot of excess space on both of those. They could either be combined, they could be turned into something else, but having the iPhone versions of these just live on the iPad just doesn't feel... It feels like a waste. There's so much wasted space in here. And iPadOS 14, a big part of that OS update was kind of like compact UI and taking better advantage of the space that was available. And those two just never really got that touch. Speaking of compact UI, another place the iPad could improve is its folder design, where you could put apps, shortcuts, bookmarks, whatever. When you open a folder on the iPad right now, it takes up the whole screen. I think, it could borrow something from the Mac's design of the way the folders interact in the dock, and that it could just pop up. This would also make it really easy to drag and drop apps out of that folder and into something like Stage Manager. The other thing would be interactive widgets. So pre-iOS 15, iPadOS 15, iPadOS 14, the old style widgets, they were interactive. You could tap on them. If you had like a task manager widget, you could tap on the box and it would mark it as completed. That is no longer here in the current new style widgets. If you tap on a task in a task manager style widget, it'll just open the app. It'll open it to that task if it's a properly written widget, but it doesn't mark it as completed. It just opens the app. So interactive widgets, I think, would be a huge thing. If you've ever used a keyboard with the iPad, you have seen this bar, and it gets in the way in so many different apps. The stuff that is in this bar is all accessible via different means, and honestly, I just think this bar is useless and should go away. It usually does more harm than good. One thing we got with iPadOS 16 is Driver Kit, and I was really excited to see it, but I haven't really seen a lot of third-party apps or utilities or hardware take advantage of it. So this isn't really exactly a feature request or something I want, but I would love to see kind of like a PR campaign. Go into third-party hardware and just be like, hey, this is here. You should adopt it. Yeah, looking at you, Stream Deck. You should adopt this because Chris would love to use his Stream Deck with his iPad. And I'm sure other people would, but Chris is the one making this video and we absolutely know he would love to use a Stream Deck with his iPad. Guys, I'd really like to use my Stream Deck with my iPad. That would be really cool. So if you could adopt Driver Kit, that would be awesome. Also along the same lines as Driver Kit, let's get, multi-stream audio support. I don't think this is necessarily something that's like Driver Kit specific, but it could kind of go along those lines, so that's why I put it here. So multi-stream audio, why is this important? So if I'm having a Zoom call, I can't also record my local audio track, which is how podcasts are made, or how most podcasts are made. Podcasts with high-quality audio, that's how they're made. So there needs to be something on the iPad that allows me to have a Zoom call, Skype call, FaceTime call, whatever, but also be able to use an app like Ferrite and record my local audio track. And then if I could also record that Zoom call, FaceTime call, Skype call, whatever, let me record that as well so, when it comes to editing, I can put it all together. And then webcam and streaming tool support. I'm a little unclear on this one. If third-party webcams can actually work with the iPad now, thanks to Driver Kit, I need to get that clarified. I'm not entirely sure. But as far as I know right now, even if they are possible, there aren't any that do it. So it would be nice if, third parties made webcam utilities. If Canon made their webcam utility for the iPad so I could use my fancy camera with my iPad for video calls or live streaming stuff, like live streaming tools would be great to see. So if we kind of move over to the apps, there is some stuff I would like to see, of course, here. Apple's Pro apps like Final Cut, Logic, and Xcode. These are being asked for to death. There's nobody that uses the iPad full time that's like, no. They would be great. Xcode is kind of there. I will give it like 25% there because we have Swift Playgrounds. You can technically write an app from start to finish via Swift Playgrounds, but the catch is there's a lot of stuff missing. Like you can't even do in-app purchases if you're an app developer. That's kind of a big thing because that's how you make money on the App Store. But all that being said, I'm really excited for the pro third-party apps we are getting, like Resolve and that 3D modeling app that I can never remember the name for. I am really excited to start to see those come to the iPad. Along those same lines as the Pro apps, the other thing is allow developers and users to compile code on the iPad. I know why this hasn't happened in the past. The iPad is meant it's kind of this lockdown device so that arbitrary code just can't run automatically in the background because that's how malware and stuff works is code just gets executed in the background without the user's consent. I do think there's a lot of ways that they could work around this to where code just can't arbitrarily run in the background, like from a script or something being compiled or something like that. There are a lot of security ways. But the biggest obvious one too is that it could be tied to the new developer mode that is a part of iPadOS 16. So if you aren't aware, in order to install a iPadOS beta on your iPad, now you have to go in and turn on the developer mode. Well, make this a part of that developer mode. Make it so that I have to go in and be like, yes, I know what I am doing with this device. I take full responsibility. Turn on developer mode and let me compile code. Let me run scripts and stuff like that. The app Files is getting really good. Over the last couple of years, it gets better and better every single year. I've gone back and watched a few of my old iPadOS walkthroughs, and that's something I mention every year, and I thought that was interesting that Files is getting better and better and better. But it's still not quite Finder level. There's a lot of feature differences that could get flushed out. But there's a couple of things I think Files in particular would benefit from. Having the app text edit and preview built into Files or have them be separate apps that could be launched would be really handy. There's a lot of text files and stuff that I get, and if I just open it in Files, it gives me just the dumb preview of it to where I can read it, but you can't type in it or add something to it. And preview, this is confusing, but there's Mac preview, there's the Mac app preview, and then when you open a file in Files on the iPad, that's technically called preview. Make the Mac app preview, those features come to the iPad version of preview. And then the other thing when it comes to the Files app is give people the ability to format external drives. I hear this one a ton. Somebody buys a new external drive, they don't own a Mac, they just work from the iPad or something like that, and they plug it into their iPad and it doesn't work because it's in TFS formatted, or it's not the proper FAT format or Mac OS journal or APFS. That's what I was looking for. So it doesn't even need to be full disk utility. Disk utility would be great, but just the ability to hey, this external drive was plugged in. It's not the correct format to work with the iPad. Would you like to format it? Let me hit yes and have it format. The Shortcuts app is something I love. I love Shortcuts, use it every single day, and there's a lot of things it could benefit from, but I think the biggest one on the iPad, just specifically the iPad, is being able to run a shortcut from a keyboard shortcut. This is on the Mac version of Shortcuts, not on the iPad version. So let me, tie a shortcut to Command-Shift E or something like that, or Command-Shift T to create a new task, or not that one. That one's used for other stuff. But there's plenty of ways to be hey, set up a shortcut. You can run it system-wide. Oh, hey, maybe you shouldn't use Command-W because Command-W closes Windows and stuff like that. It can give helpful suggestions for shortcuts not to use. And then going back to Files really quick. So Finder on the Mac has these quick actions, so you can basically put shortcuts in these quick action sections. And Files has this quick action section, but you can't put shortcuts in there like you can with Finder. So I'd love to see like that ability to come there, so that way you can just quickly run a shortcut right in the Files app with the file you have selected. In iPadOS 14, there was a bug introduced, and it is still there to this day, that when you run a shortcut from Spotlight, if it has the ask for input action or uses the ask for input variable, and you start typing, like it comes up and you would just start typing there. It then starts typing in the Spotlight bar. It does not type in the ask for input bubble, that text section. It types in that. You have to hit Command Space to dismiss Spotlight, and then you can start typing in the ask for input section. This bug has been there since iPadOS 14. I have filed feedback on it. Please fix it. Please. Please. Pretty please. A few years ago, we got the ability to set default web browser and default mail apps. Now, those two are very easy to set default apps for because they have very specific URLs. So like for mail, you would get mail to : and then an email address, and then websites, you would obviously get like HTTP, www, all that stuff. So those are really easy to be like, hey, anytime you when you see a link, have it go to this other app instead of these. But it's time to start being able to set different apps to be the default. So stuff like text editors, task managers, calendars, notes apps. Just so many different options out there. Like, hey, when I open a .txt file, always open in, Textastic or something like that. Let's talk about hardware. I just have a few things here. I'm overall pretty happy with the iPad hardware and like the direction it's going. But one thing I would love to see is a bigger iPad. I'd love like a 16-inch iPad, especially now that we're getting stuff like DaVinci Resolve and really heavy real pro applications that would benefit from having a bigger screen. I also would love to see a folding iPad, but like one of those ones from Westworld where like it lays flat completely and it's like an iPhone, and then like you can open it up and now it's a tablet. That's off in the future, but it would be cool. The other thing is Apple did a new smart keyboard or magic keyboard or smart magic folio key. I can't remember, whatever. The new keyboard for the 10th generation iPad, where the keyboard now connects to the bottom edge of the iPad and there's a kickstand. And I'm kind of nervous that that's what they're going to do for the next iPad Pro. I'm genuinely, I do not like kickstands. So I think what would be a cool compromise is what like the original Surface Pro was, where there was a connector on the bottom and the iPad connected to this laptop looking thing. So basically it was a laptop that broke into two pieces, and then the iPad connected to the laptop part when you wanted it to be in laptop mode, and then you could disconnect it when you wanted it to be in tablet mode. And the cool thing about the Surface Pro, the original one, if I remember correctly, is it had extra battery and like extra GPU power. Not that the iPad needs that extra GPU power, but the extra battery would be very interesting, and more ports. That's a way to put more USB-C ports and an SD card reader and a headphone jack in the iPad. And then lastly, for the hardware section, more color options. It's so strange to me that the more money you spend on an iPad, the worse your color options get. So the 10th generation iPad has the best colors. The blue looks great. The yellow's cool. Then there's a pink one if that's your thing. Obviously, I want the blue ones for me. But if you go all the way up to the iPad Pro, you either get silver or a slightly darker silver. And it's like, okay, can I have a blue iPad Pro, please? Pretty please. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to hear from you what you want to see for the future of the iPad in the comments below. My thanks to Ugreen for sponsoring this video. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.